So hey, um, kind of in a state right now, so I'm gonna ramble into this camera about some things that's been on my mind lately, and if I can make something coherent out of this after I'm done, then I'm uploading it to YouTube, and if you're seeing this, then that's what has happened. A bit about myself. So I'm an Army veteran. I've served in Afghanistan, and while I'm going to kind of get into some heavy stuff, I don't want this to be a like one of those like shaming videos, like Memorial Day, Veterans Day, like, you know, if you feel good right now, you're fucking shit. That's not how I work, and it's not what. I didn't serve to turn around and do that to people. I served so that, among other things, so that the people I cared about wouldn't have to. So that the things I cared about would be preserved for future generations. I don't want you to feel like shit after watching this. I just want people to think a little bit. And the reason for all this is basically, I'm kind of, to get right down to it, I'm conflating a couple different things, but they're things that kind of matter to me. So, on the one hand, I've been writing a song lately about my survivor's guilt for living through experiences that a number of my friends didn't, and kind of sorting that out and sorting out like what their sacrifice means to me personally. And then the other thread that's going on, well, a thread, there's several obviously because, you know, complicated times, like any time really, but what's getting my goat, and I don't know really how prevalent it is, I just know that I'm seeing enough of it that it's getting my attention, is this like derision and rejection of free speech, of all frickin' things. I don't know what you people are thinking, those of you who kind of follow that thought, and I kind of realize that having said what I've said right now, if you're still watching this, you're probably not one of those people, because they fucking like block, like immediately they see, you know, the first sign of dissent and they just like tune it right the fuck out. But so, you know what, if you're open-minded and you're one of those people that are like, well, you know, maybe free speech shouldn't be so free, but I'm going to keep an open mind, and you're still watching, I'm going to tell you what free speech means to me. And I'm using this particular setting for a very specific reason, which is going to be evident shortly. And if you're on my side, as I see it, and you didn't serve, and or maybe you did, and I don't know. But if you side kind of on my side of things, and you are looking for validation or just like another perspective on, you know, what this means to someone else, here you go. Here's what's happening. So I'm going to point you to these 4 beers. This first one is a Sierra Nevada Narwhal, barrel aged, if I recall correctly. Yep. Okay. So it's a barrel aged Sierra Nevada Narwhal. This beer is representing my friend Staff Sergeant Ed Lowe. He was killed in Iraq on June 13th of 2009. He was a classmate of mine at EOD school. He was a good friend of mine. He was a guest at my wedding. You know, like, I've been to a lot of funerals, and usually the pattern is you talk about all the good things about that person. You kind of gloss over like their shitty sides, because we're all human, right? We all do things we're not proud of. We all do things we'd take back if we could. We all are assholes at times. Ed is the one exception to that rule. Like, I cannot think of anything he ever did that was ever shitty. And I've never found any evidence of anyone else having something similar to say. He didn't swear. He didn't drink, except for a couple occasions, which he kind of learned his lesson from. He was, like, no matter how shitty a situation, he always had he had like a bunch of like goofy catchphrases that he would just spout off, and it would be like annoying from anyone else, but his timing and his personality and his delivery just made it like, oh, it's Ed, or Lowe, or whatever you knew him as, and he just took the tension out of the room, and he always kept a positive frame of mind, no matter how dire the consequences. And I knew him in school, so I don't know if his consequences were ever really that dire there, except for, like, in his case, if he screwed up too bad, he'd have to go back to the infantry. Oh, that's another thing. So this kid, he was a kid when he died. He was like 23 or 24. I was older when I met him than he was when he died. He got offered a full ride scholarship to MIT, and he turned it down to join the frickin' army. I mean, he had a sense of duty and obligation that just most people don't, and is sorely lacking in a lot of people these days. But anyway, when times are tough, I still think of him and his goofy little sayings, and I miss the fuck out of him. He was an awesome dude. And the people who knew him can probably echo that much better than I can really convey to you. He was the best person I knew, like, hands down. Like, and I'm not trying to shit on other people that I know. It's just that we're talking about, I think he was a good friend to people he didn't even like. He just, like, whatever shit, whatever evil was inside of him, he completely pushed it down inside somewhere where no one could find it and never ever find evidence of it. He just did good, period. And this beer's for him. I'm going to drink it on June 13th. This one's for my friend Chauncey Mays. I'm going to make sure I get this right. It's a farmhouse provision ale, brewed with wild yeast from Texas. Chauncey was from East Texas. This brewer, I think, is from around Austin, which is a little bit further west, but looking for something representational, and this thing seemed to fit the bill, because Chauncey was kind of a wild guy. He was definitely from Texas. And I knew Chauncey the longest out of anyone from the EOD program. For those of you who don't know, before you can become an EOD technician, you have to take a suit test. And it's a two-phase thing where, in no particular order, you have to spend a lot of time in a full chemical gear and then in the EOD bomb suit, where you're going to be put through a number of tasks where essentially what the objective is, like beating, like I can get into the details of what everything little thing is, but really what it comes down to is that when you get into those sorts of like encapsulating things, when you sweat out all your electrolytes, you actually lose your ability to think. So what these suits do is they test your ability to not be claustrophobic, but also B, to still be able to continue to function as a rational thinking thing when you're put under stress and you're sweating out your ability to think. Oh, God damn it. So my wife is okay. All right, so as I was saying, basically the suit test is meant to A, make sure you're not claustrophobic, and B, to test your ability to function as you literally sweat out your ability to think. So you maintain like your manual dexterity. That's another important part of it. So they make you get into the suit, they make you sweat a lot, you get your heart rate up, and then you start having to do puzzles while you're wearing shit that like impedes your manual dexterity. And so Chauncey helped give me my bomb suit test when I was at basic training at Fort Leonard Wood. So he was basically the first EOD tech I ever met. He like drove us out to the range where we did the suit test. He let us listen to music, which if you've never been to basic training is like a really novel thing about like 8 weeks in. So I got through the bomb suit test. He and his unit gave me the first inkling of what it's like to be an EOD technician. Like, they're kind of like treated us like human beings again, because if you haven't been to basic training or any such military indoctrination, is like instant experience, and it's like a short-lived thing. Like, you get through it pretty quickly, but while you're there, it's like you just kind of forget about being a person for a while, because you kind of have to just to deal with it. You just deal with whatever the task is at hand. You just do that, and then you get on with shit. Anyway, so I get out of basic training. I go to school. I graduate. I get sent to my first unit. I'm there for about a year, and then this goofy fucking specialist shows up that I immediately recognize as the guy who gave me my bomb suit test. He quickly gets promoted to sergeant because he was already in a promotable status. What I take away from Chauncey is he was a tiny little man, like physically just itty bitty. But he had a huge heart. Like, he certainly had his demons. We saw them. He'd been on like I think 2 deployments before he came to the 705th, to my unit, and like when he got to drinking, it definitely weighed on him. Some of the things he's been through. But you know, more often than not, he was a happy person that just looked out for everybody else. There's just no other way to really phrase it. You know, he had a wife and 2 daughters that he loved dearly, and put first in basically anything. And then to everyone else, you know, he just was a good guy. He, you know, and someone who would willingly self-sacrifice. You know, like if someone had to stay late to do some work, and he had a say in it, it would be him and not someone else. He took care of everyone he was in a position to take care of, um, and I really can't say a lot more than that. He was a complete redneck, but he would surprise you. Like if you just had the expectation of, you're like, okay, I'm this fucking redneck here, he would fucking show you up, because he'd be like, I don't know if any of y'all watch Star Trek, or not Star Trek, Stargate Universe. I really kind of enjoyed that series for a while it lasted, and I was shocked and amazed to find out that Chauncey loved it too. But I shouldn't have been, because it was fucking Chauncey, and he's just, he was a much bigger man than he really appeared to be. And, we're all diminished for his loss, like any of these guys I'm going to talk about. So, this beer's for him. I'm drinking it February 28th. This beer is for Specialist Christopher Stark. Of the guys I'm going to talk about tonight, he's the one I knew the least. He was a fairly new arrival at the 705th before we deployed. Not the newest of the new, but fairly new. And I'm personally just not really an outgoing guy, so I didn't get to know him too well. But when I did get to talk to him, and from everything I know about him, I'm really impressed by the kid, and saddened that he was gone, which is why this is a black IPA. A, black because obviously morning, and B, IPA because bitter. His loss is really particularly bitter in my mind, because he was so young. He had so much to offer. He was such a bright kid. And even in as tight-knit a unit as an UD company can be, there's still cliques that form, and he certainly found himself into cliques, but he didn't treat other people like they were lesser or different, or in my experience he treated everyone the same. And he was always, like, he always had something thoughtful to say, and he was always considerate of other people. And I really regret not knowing him better. And I regret right this second there's not someone here who can represent him better, because those who could, who really were his friends, they're torn down by his loss much more than I am. We all lost big when we lost Chris Stark. I know that much. I'm also going to drink this beer on February 28th, right after I drink Chauncey's, because Chris was killed shortly after Chauncey died. There's no real symbolism with this beer. It's for Michael Garcia, who didn't really drink fancy beer. Well, none of these guys really did. Basically, the deal with this shit is that we're looking at a prolonged season of drinking here, which ends on July 4th when Mike was killed. And Unibrew, who, if you are a beer drinker and you don't drink their shit, you're fucked up. I just wanted to close out the year of drinking on a good note, and so that's why I picked this. Mike was a complicated character. He also, like Chauncey, had demons from his previous deployment. His team leader got blown up, as well as him, while they're doing a post-blast investigation. And his team leader lost limbs. Even though Mike probably saved his life, he still carried the burden. And I don't know if he ever really fully forgave himself for it, even though realistically speaking, he had nothing to forgive. He did everything he was supposed to do. And he also, while wounded, carried on the post-blast investigation, and he completed the mission that they were tasked to do by himself, and that's part of who Mike was. He was the guy who got shit done. If you were here at my bar, and if Mike were right here beside me, and you were just meeting right now, he would say, "Hey, my name's Mike. I'm an asshole. Just so you know." And he kind of reveled in that, but what he wouldn't tell you then, and what you would have to figure out for yourself, was he really wasn't so much he was just a pure dickhead. It was just that, he was the guy that would tell you the truth no matter how much you didn't want to hear it at that time. But the fact of the matter is that you needed to hear it, and he was the guy who was just going to tell you. Mike would just tell you how it is. And, he just, whatever he was thinking, if it was important, if it really fucking mattered, he would just come out and say it to you. And I've been fucked up enough times in my life that he said it to me plenty of times. A part of what, tears at me so much about Mike's loss is that, as tormented as he was, things were starting to come together for him. He met a woman that he really cared about. He was really starting to be happy again, conspicuously. When things were finally coming together for him, and it all got taken away. And again, we all lost. He was going to go on to be a Louisiana State Trooper, probably. He used to joke about getting a job as a sniper for the Border Control. Bear in mind, we're talking about Michael Garcia, so yeah, Mexican as it gets, but he did not like illegal immigrants. But yeah, he was going to go on to law enforcement, and he would have done a lot of good. He had a lot of information, a lot of knowledge he could have shared and contributed, but he's gone now. So I'm drinking this beer July 4th. Basically, I'm trying to put some faces on the people I think about when people talk about giving up our rights, period. Any right that we have, in the U.S. or any Western democracy, but especially the U.S., because, that's where I am, and, these guys serve with me. I don't think you people who would give those up so callously, those rights that we paid for so dearly, I don't think you appreciate what that price was. These are my 4 friends, but we're talking about something that's cost us hundreds of thousands of lives since the Revolutionary War. And behind each and every one of those men and women is a story of a person who, had hopes and dreams and flaws and complications and friends and family. That is a stupendous cost. I realize that today that your average voter, your average citizen in the U.S. really is very far removed from the wars that we fight. Not just because the wars we fight are so far away, but because there's such a small percentage of the population that's fighting them. We're like a warrior caste almost. Between us and the police, such a small subset of the population. So few people really know anyone who serves in the military or, goes out to police our streets. So I think it's much more difficult for people to empathize with what those activities actually cost us. So if nothing else, I just want you to remember that. If you watch this video and you disagree with me, that's okay. I just want you to actually understand what you're disagreeing with, what we've paid to give that to you. I want you to think about what the changes you want to make actually mean, okay? The second part of what I want to get at here is I swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution. This is it's not kind of cliche, it's really cliche, but that oath doesn't have an expiration date. I certainly don't feel that free of my obligation to honor that oath. And so for the flip side of that thought, to me anyway, is that the people who I do see, advocating that we limit or do away with our right to free speech, for the sake of people's fucking feelings, by the way, even assuming that they were right, which I don't agree with, but for the censorious people out there, here's the thing I don't get, is that most of y'all, in my experience, this is admittedly anecdotal, but most of y'all aren't very physical people. You guys aren't doers. You're not the person that's gonna go make somebody else not do something. You'll use shaming tactics. You'll slander people. You do a lot of underhanded shit, but you're not gonna be the one that physically goes and says, no, you can't do that. You're gonna be the one that says, someone make them stop doing that. Who do you think's gonna enforce that right? Or, who's gonna enforce that suspension of rights? You need people like me to do that. I'm not gonna fucking do that. I will die before I let people do that in my country. I'm not kidding. If you want to take away our right to voice our opinions, this right amongst many that my friends fucking died for, that's happening over my dead body, and I'm not kidding. Okay? Most of the people I know that served in the military are police officers won't fucking do that. Because they have, they too have friends who died for those rights, that swore an oath to defend those rights. So I don't know what the fuck y'all are thinking. Seriously. Okay, let's assume you get what you want. Who's gonna make anyone fucking do it? You won't. And you sure as hell won't make me do it. I will die before I do that, before I take away someone else's right to speak for themselves. I'm not posturing. I've already risked my life for those rights. My friends have died for those rights. And I will never forget that. And I will never allow that sacrifice to go in vain. For those of y'all who value and defend free speech, here's to you. For those of you who don't, go fuck yourself. Peace, bitches.